Okay, hello vinyl community. This is my first video on my YouTube channel. I am a big collector of reissue labels and original pressings of vinyl, things that sound great, just good audio quality things, and also music that I like a lot. And one of the genres of music that I'm very interested in, and which is a big portion of my collection, is classical music. And over a bit of time, I have amassed quite a few classical records. I've heard the good, the bad, and the ugly of a lot of these records. And I thought today I would talk about not only probably my 5 favorite classical records that are in the collection, but the 5 best records from the Living Stereo series. Now, these are all fantastic, or almost all of them are fantastic. The ones that I'm going to be showing you are reissued by a pure analog reissuing company known as Analog Productions. You can find them at acousticsounds.com. They are located in Kansas, and they specialize in reissuing old music kind of from, throughout a long period of time. Some of the stuff is recent, but they specialize in all analog reissuing using the original tapes, and that's what they've been using here. So Living Stereo, is a bit of a background, is a label that was kind of a series created in the late 50s and early 60s by RCA, and a lot of people, myself included, consider them to be the greatest sounding classical recordings that exist to date. And so there are some absolutely fantastic ones, some of which I'll show you, and some that are not great. I can talk about those in another video, but today we're going to talk about the good ones. I'm going to give my top 5. I'll say that there's no particular order, but a few of them I might mention. I'll say, like, okay, this might be the best one. But then again, opinions change over time. They definitely change for me. So I'll say actually that they're not in any particular order. So the first reissue record that I can show you is probably one of the most famous ones. This is Strauss's also Sprach, Zarathustra, conducted by Fritz Reiner with the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. This was originally released in 1960 and reissued in 2014 by Analog Productions, as I stated earlier. So before hopping into the music, I thought I'd just kind of get this out of the way because all of these covers are very similar, but the presentation of them is very nice. You get this nice glossy cover, very sturdy cardboard with like tip-on jacket here, so it's not like electronically printed or anything. It's pasted over. Very high quality. They definitely protect the records very well. And I'd just like to say this is about 40 USD. So comparing to an original pressing that you can get from whatever 1960, it is insanely expensive to get one of these as an original. Thousands of dollars probably. And I wouldn't be surprised if this one sounds even better because you're not limited by the poor quality of the vinyl that was available in the late 50s and early 60s. So this is a famous piece. It sounds fantastic. Just, everyone knows the first minute from 2001: A Space Odyssey, but it sounds fantastic. The spacing is incredible. Definitely, probably at number 5 on my list, kind of like there. I did say at the start that I wouldn't be ranking them, but, it's fun. My opinion might change, but this one sounds fantastic. I also thought maybe if you are not aware of this, all the Living Stereos kind of have this label on them. It's called a shaded dog. So they're very well known. If you look up the Living Stereo Shaded Dog series on Google, you'll be able to find, I believe there's a few websites that show every single release that came under the series. So if you find a piece that you really like, you might be able to get a reissue of it from Analog Productions specifically. They basically have a lot of the catalog of the Living Stereo series. So that's the first one, also Sprach Zarathustra, conducted by Fritz Reiner. Fantastic one, really big orchestra sound, great one. Now, the second one that I would like to show is, again, by Fritz Reiner. Reiner was I don't want to say the main conductor under RCA for that Living Stereo series, but he did a lot of the titles that they have, and he has some of the best ones. So the best sounding ones, very likely they were conducted by him. So the next one is another famous piece, Scheherazade, composed by Rimsky-Korsakov. This one was originally released in 1960 under Living Stereo, and it was reissued in 2017 by Analog Productions again. This one's fantastic. It's a great piece. It's got so much variety throughout the entire piece. You have the dynamic opening. Make sure that you set up your volume properly, or else you will startle yourself with how loud and dynamic and how clear it is, right? There's no distortions, no nothing. It sounds absolutely fantastic. And then immediately after, you get a beautiful solo violin, who I believe on this record is Sidney Harth. Don't know who that is, but he does a great job. You get a very nice passage, fantastic spacing throughout. It's a very famous piece. The entire piece is fantastic. It was mastered by Ryan K. Smith, who kind of works for Analog Productions, but he does a lot of their titles. He's a great mastering engineer. And I'd just also like to point out that there is a 33 RPM version and a double 45 RPM version of this record. Now, this is the only classical title that I have both of, because, you know, it's kind of a waste of money to get both of them, in my opinion, unless you're a professional reviewer of some sorts. So I actually did have a bit of a problem with the 33 RPM one that I got initially. The vinyl was very noisy, dirty, and even after many cleanings, it couldn't be fixed after ultrasonic cleaning as well. So I decided, okay, well, I heard a lot of people talking good stuff about the 45 releases, and I thought it was a good opportunity to really see how the sound differs between a 45 and a 33. And so this is the 45 version. Now, what I will say is there is probably, don't quote me on this, but on my system, which I'll just quickly say, I have Paradigm Premier 400F speakers with a Rega P6 with the exact cartridge, and a Rega elex-r amplifier with the preamplifier built in. So I don't have a multi-million-dollar system, but I have a decent enough system where I can confidently say that there's probably a 10 to 15% improvement in the 45 compared to the 33 RPM version. Now, is that worth the extra 20 USD that you pay for it? I know it's going to sound cliche, but, you know, it's up to you. Personally, for me, I had a problem with that one. If you love this piece, sure, go for it. The spacing improves slightly, the bass improves, it becomes clearer, the dynamics are more noticeable, they're louder. It's easier to pinpoint the locations of specific instruments when the orchestra is playing together. And again, the sound stage is better. You know, I don't regret getting it. It's not as big of a difference as I would have hoped for, but then again, it's the same tape, right? It's the same recording. You just kind of reveal slightly more detail because you got wider grooves and you have the 45 RPM. Again, like, you know, I'm lazy sometimes. If I want to listen to the piece in as best of a continuity as possible, I might play the 33, even if it has those problems on it, just so that I can hear movement 1 and 2, flip it over, hear movement 3 and 4. For this one, you have to flip it over a bunch of times. But to be honest, if you're really listening to the music, it's not a big deal. It takes like 5 seconds. So that's Scheherazade. I've talked enough about this. I thought it would just be a good opportunity to really show what I think about the differences, more specifically about the 45 and the 33 version, because I kind of found that information difficult to find online. So hopefully that's helpful if you're struggling like I did with deciding whether 45 is worth it or not. And I can put the more specifications with what I said about my system below if you want to compare and see if you have a better system, if you have a similar system or a worse system or whatever, to see if if you see if it's worth it for yourself. So the next 3 titles, top 3 that I'm going to talk about are, yes, Living Stereos, but they're also kind of a partnership between RCA and Decca. So Decca was, big. They were probably next to RCA, the biggest competitors for classical music, and to be honest, they're probably the best. They had a longer catalog with better quality. Other than Living Stereo, RCA didn't really have any high quality audiophile classical recordings, but the RCAs are arguably better than the Decca ones, but that's a debate for another day. So they did have a collaboration for a few titles, and though all of those RCA Decca titles are absolutely fantastic, those ones all sound great. The ones I'm about to show you, I believe, are the best of those, and therefore probably the best classical recordings you can get, in my opinion, on the market right now. They're reissued, they're 40 USD, except for one of them, which is a double, which I'll get into later, a double record. The first one is Gounod Faust, ballet music from Faust, and Bizet's Carmen Suite. This one is conducted by Alexander Gibson, and it has ballet music from Faust on the first side, and on the second side, it has the Carmen Suite by Bizet, which is a very famous piece. Compared to the other two, and those other two are like 10 out of 10, the ones that I showed, the Scheherazade and the Zarathustra. Those are 10 out of 10, but these they really push the limit of what can be done with like audiophile classical. This is really the best that you can possibly get. This is a fantastic recording. The dynamics are incredible. The spacing is perfect. The soundstage is amazing. Each individual instrument you can hear. There's nothing really that I can complain about this, unless you get a bad copy of it, like a quality control problem. But that doesn't usually happen with analog productions. They're very meticulous in that. I think the only real problem that I ever had with analog productions was that Scheherazade. And, I ended up getting the 45 to kind of replace that one. So nothing really to say about this one other than the fact that it's fantastic. Then the second one is also an RCA Decca, and it's also conducted by Alexander Gibson, just as that Gounod and Carmen was. So this one is kind of like a compilation album of sorts. It's Witch's Brew. It has Arnold's Overture to Tam O'Shanter, which I believe was in Bridge Over River Kwai. It was a movie. I didn't really know it before, so it wasn't that popular until I heard this record. Now I can recognize it because I've played this record many times. It is fantastic sounding. You have Mussorgsky's and then Ravel's orchestral interpretation from Pictures at an Exhibition of the second movement, Nomus, which is a really dark, fantastic piece. And then you finish off side one with Mussorgsky's Night on a Bare Mountain, which was orchestrated by Korsakov. Then on side two, you get Saint-Saëns' Danse Macabre, which is fantastic, and then the Humperdinck, which is Ride from Hansel and Gretel, which I also did not know before, but it was also it's also a fantastic piece. And then Liszt's Mephisto Waltz. So you can kind of tell by the style of the music here that it's a Witch's Brew. It's more kind of like a Halloween dark style to it. And because it's a compilation album, you know that they kind of picked pieces that would sound great, right? There's so much variety on this record. You get a little bit of everything. The Saint-Saëns' Danse Macabre is a lot of pizzicato and a solo violin. Sounds beautiful, and then there's kind of the build-up and a dynamic explosion at the end. And then there's other pieces where they just start off immediately dark and deep and loud, like the Nomus from Pictures at an Exhibition. So because it's like a compilation album of sorts of different artists, or not artists, this is modern times, different composers, because you have that whole variety and you got to pick from this, there's just so much stuff that you get on this record. And this one and all five of these I would recommend you get, but I might be biased because this is one of my favorites, but this one sounds fantastic. I would definitely recommend getting it. It's a perfect record in my opinion. So this last one, and again, that one, like the Zarathustra and the other ones I talked about, originals, insanely expensive. Unless you're a serious classical collector and don't really want to listen to the originals, then yeah, that's the only time I would say buy it if you have the money. But if you actually want the best sound quality, I'll probably say that one. The newer issues from Analog Productions. And so for the last one, I believe that if you're not into classical, you want a classical vinyl, and you are willing to spend 80 USD, which is the price now of this one, I would recommend getting this one. This is also an RCA Decca. This is the Royal Ballet performances conducted by Anserme. I mean, it's just, why I would recommend it is it's perfect sounding, and it's got a lot of hit performances, so songs that a lot of people know, songs from the Nutcracker, Swan Lake, Sleeping Beauty. The second track on side 1 is Dance of the Sugar Plum Fairy. Famous piece, everyone knows it, you definitely heard it before. And then just at the start you can hear, I don't know if it's a glockenspiel or something like that, in the back of the orchestra, just so well placed and like echoes throughout the room. It just sounds fantastic. It's jam-packed with music. Like, there's a double 45 version of this. I don't think they put it on 4 LPs because it's a double LP set, and I think they put it on 5 LPs actually, and they get pretty jam-packed onto each side. So this might be a situation where maybe you can get the 45 box set. It's more expensive, but you know, there's more space on the record, so maybe that helps compared to the Scheherazade. Maybe it's a bigger difference. Maybe it's less of a difference because this one was so well recorded. I don't know. If anyone has an idea about that, let me know. But yeah, so you get the nice glossy cover again, and what's also great is on the inside you kind of have a book stapled in, where they basically show you different pictures, and they actually give you explanations of each of the pieces that are on this record. So there you get different pieces, different pictures, and then you also get like pictures of some of the ballerinas that are throughout. And yeah, it's a fantastic sounding record. Maybe the best one out of the bunch, I don't know, it's subjective. But the last 3 that I showed you, I think those are the 3 best, not only Analog Productions classical titles, but probably the best classical, audiophile classical releases that exist out there. I know there's other ones that exist that also sound absolutely fantastic, and maybe my opinion will change as I learn more, but at the moment I can confidently say that those 3 are fantastic. Definitely compared to all of the other living stereo releases that Analog Productions has released. So yeah, those are the 5 records. I'll just go over them quickly again. The number 5, I should pick them all up here, was the also Sprach Zarathustra, great one. Number 4 was Scheherazade, Fritz Reiner. Then we get the Gounod Faust and Carmen Suite. This is the RCA Decca one. Then the Witch's Brew. And then, last but not least, the Royal Ballet performances. Royal Ballet Gala performances. So yeah, if you do have any questions about more sonic specifics about these records, don't hesitate to ask. I know them very well. I spent a lot of time listening to these records, and if you have questions about any of the other Living Stereo Analog Productions catalogs, or the catalog there, I'd be happy to answer any questions about sonic quality about specific records. I know some of them are not fantastic. For example, I would specifically avoid one that's titled The French Touch. That one has a kind of collection, like the Witch's Brew, of French titles. So if you do have any more questions about that, yeah, please ask them. I'd be happy to answer them. Yeah, so that's the end of the video. I hope this was helpful. I rambled on a little bit. I do love these records a lot, so I can talk about them for hours, just the sonic specifics of each of them, and the pieces themselves. They're fantastic. So yeah, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next time.